welcome to Black Comics Universe exclusively here on The Experience. I am your host, Imani Lateef, creator of Peep Game Comics. Please help us out by hitting share and giving us a like and a follow. Then make sure to tune in for our original programming 7 days a week. Black Comics Universe streams live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. on all DSPs. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. And as always, stay tuned for Miss Jen's Minute to Skim It right after this show. I am joined by my good friend tonight, Tim Fielder, the author of Infinitum. He's got his copy. I got my copy right here.
Yeah, there it is.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Very cool.
And I'm going to start off, you know what's funny? I'm going to start off with an apology because the last time we talked, because last time we talked, I didn't get a chance to read the book. And I had read
it. Stop. Oh, man. He gonna review live, man. Oh, no. Man,
it's going to be a live review because had I read it,
money.
The whole conversation would have went a whole lot differently, man. I'm telling you.
Right.
This book, let me tell you, everybody that listens to this show, all these people that I've been talking to lately, as far as Black comics and the comic industry and all that kind of stuff, you have got to read that book. Infinitum. We're going to be talking tonight about Afrofuturism. We're going to be talking about storytelling. That's actually one of the main reasons why I brought you on tonight. Storytelling.
Thank you.
The art of storytelling. Specifically, and I think because there's a distinct difference between storytelling and writing, right? That's where I need your help on this, because this is one of the main reasons why I brought you on, because I've been doing a couple of reviews of some independent comics, and I'm going to be, so stay tuned. I want people to stay tuned for that.
Imani, get to it, man. You're delaying, man.
No. I'm gonna get to it.
It's like I'm sitting here sweating, man. I'm like,
the review. You're not getting the review.
He did not give me a heads up. He was gonna do this. He just sprung this on me on the ass. I have no defense. I'm just here. Go for it, man.
No. Because I've been working on these reviews for these guys, and I wanted to bring you on because I need help in terms of this critique I'm putting together, because I want to share with them the core of what I'm talking about when I read their stories. Okay. And the thing that I'm looking for, and it might be in some cases might be the thing that I'm missing or the thing that I'm losing track of, is the story.
Okay.
Right. And when I say it's like what I'm missing is the story, is because for instance, that people debate all the time who's more important, the writer or the artist, right? You get a lot of these debates. They want to know who's more important. Is the writer more important to comics, specifically in comics? Is the artist the most important person? Is the writer the most important person? And the reality is, the most important thing is the story. If there's not a good story,
right, it doesn't matter about the artist.
It doesn't matter. The art. It's like the artist may fail. The writer may fail if there's no there's not a good story, right? And I'm trying to articulate that because, for instance, and if there's tons of examples of really good stories, like, Spider-Man there's a story there before you get to the writer, writes, dialogue and all that kind of stuff. Stan Lee was famous to like his, Marvel way of creating comics. Sure. Basically is this. He relays the story first to the artist. The artist draws some pictures.
Right.
Then he comes back with the dialogue and all these other details. Sure. But first is always the story. It's at the core of everything. And I need your help in articulating this, because I know for a fact, and I was trying to figure out these reviews for these guys, and then I read Infinitum, and it's like because you have told an epic story.
Right.
This is storytelling. It's not just about writing the script and all this kind of stuff. And you're an artist, a phenomenal artist, and you do all the art in Infinitum, which carries the story. Helps to illustrate the story.
Right.
But at the core, it's such a powerful story.
Thank you.
I wanted to know if you could help me define storytelling and help writers to distinguish between what the story is and what quote unquote writing is.
Okay. And first of all, Imani, I want to thank you for having me on tonight. I really appreciate it. And secondly, I want to thank you for giving me that hard ass question to answer. So
get better.
Yeah, right. Yeah, thanks. Now I can't like walk off and say, well, Imani, that's too much, man. I'm trying to keep it light, right? All right. This is just my opinion. This is just my opinion. Anybody listening today, please, this is just my opinion. I don't know everything. I don't know everything. I'm flawed. I have all kinds of issues. Most people know I have issues. So that's fine. However, you got to look at it like this. There's a difference between concept and story.
Gotcha.
There's a difference between concept and story. A concept can be visual. A concept can be in words. A concept can be a fusion of the two. But that's not a story. That's an aspect of the story, right? A story can be both complex, right? Or it can be simple.
Right.
A story can be complex or simple. It can be a basic story, or it can be a complex story. But the effectiveness of the story is depending upon whether or not it adequately communicates the story to the reader, to the viewer. If a story doesn't do that, it kind of loses its focus, right? It's like the difference between the Matrix 1 and the Matrix 4. Both of them have dope concepts.
Right.
The concepts in the Matrix 4 are just as interesting as the concepts in the Matrix 1.
Right.
The story is very simple in the Matrix 1.
Right.
Matrix 4 gets into all this stuff, and it may be not even really the 4, but definitely 2. It gets into all this stuff about what is human, and it's like, yo, man, I just want to see if they conquer the robots, if they fight robots off, right? Or they humans are batteries, right? You're in the middle of a war, so how do you win the war? That's the story, right? What they did was they layered on top of it these dense concepts, which did not, at least in my opinion, even though I love Matrix 1's masterpiece, it's like you have to be very careful to make sure that your story rings true. I do an example sometimes in my drawing class. I was just on the for the Schaumburg Black Comic Book Festival, and I do my regular thing where I'll draw somebody, and they won't know what I'm drawing, and I'll turn around and be a stick figure, right? And they'll go, "Oh!" Then I'll draw them a little bit simpler, right, but more detail, and then finally the last drawing out, it'll be really detailed. And I'll circle the simple eye on each drawing. And I'll tell I'll ask the person, what is that? That's an eye. Well, what's that over there? That's an eye. And what's that? That's an eye. So it doesn't matter how complex or simple your story is. Doesn't matter how complex or simple your story is. As long as it communicates, you're good. And that is the challenge for every creator out there. Yo, man, I've told you this before. Me coming back into comics in 2014, it was like Planet of the Apes. I was like Charlton Heston. Because when I got out, it was like 99, was the last 99. Well, 99 was really the last job I did in comics. I doing this work with Richard Corbin.
Wow.
And back then, the artist was king.
Yeah.
The writers
in the 90s. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That's an important note. Yes.
When I came into comics in 1987, the artist was king. So I go away for 12 to 15 years, in animation, learning all this other stuff. And then I come back and I'm like, Charlton, it's a madhouse. It's a madhouse. When they hit me with the water hose, because all of a sudden the animals are running the show. And it's like, yo, what in the world have y'all been doing since I've been gone?
Wow.
I mean, oh my God, these writers walk around like they're like demigods or something. Like, I'm like, you don't even draw. What are you talking about? Right.
Yeah.
But that was kind of when I looked and did detail on what happened while I was gone. I was like, oh, okay, well, we were asking for that. Right. Meaning that if you don't treat each side with equal respect, then that's what you get.
Yeah.
Right.
It flips. Yep.
It flipped. It's just that for me, I wasn't there during the transition. I just showed up, and all of a sudden, the zombies were running. They had overrun us a long time ago, and there was zombies everywhere. I'm like, what happened?
Right. Yeah.
So back to the idea of the story. Story should be judged, in my opinion, and it's totally open to opinion. There are some folks who I think who have written brilliant stories, and they love certain books that I absolutely hate. And on the flip side, there are books that they are touting, oh, this is great. I'm like, it doesn't do it for me. Right. So it's totally open to opinion. But at its core, particularly when you're taking into consideration the language of comics, that's why I always suggest anyone read deeply Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. It is a seminal text. You have to read it. And even if you're a lazy reader like I can be, read at least that sequence where they're talking about panel to panel continuity, scene to scene, moment to moment, aspect to aspect, non sequitur. If you learn that and you integrate it into your heart and your soul, you can actually be not only an effective comic book artist, you can be an effective filmmaker. Because the
you also talk.
I'm sorry.
No, I remember you also recommended. There was another part in that book about the what is it described as? The 6 steps of
That's it.
Okay.
It's talking about it's talking about transitions. It's moment to moment, aspect to aspect, scene to scene. It goes on. That one section, is worth the price of admission. Because what he's effectively doing is describing how sequential storytelling works. Right. It's applicable to comics, to animation, and to film. Right? Because let's think. So, for example, I'm looking at you, right? But if I stop talking, that's a sense that's cut off.
Right.
But if I do this,
right, you're communicating.
Without sound.
Right.
So what you're doing when you're doing comics is you're only communicating with 2 senses, the visual and words. That's it. You don't have, you can suggest sound through images. You can suggest sound through modifying the characters and text, but it's really not sound, because what are we doing? We're filling in the sound in our brains.
Yes.
Right. If I cover the screen and I go roof, 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 your brain automatically, that was a horrible bark. Right. But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what it does. So when you understand what comics can do in terms of the layout, breakdowns, you're good. In fact, if you understand how stories are told, even if it's a good story or a bad story, you can tell a story effectively as long as you understand the language.
Now, hard pause right there.
Okay.
Because the effective storytelling is a major part of this, because
75% of it easily.
what always comes to mind when I read a lot of comics in general, but sometimes in particular, a lot of indie comics, what's needed is effective storytelling, right?
Yeah.
And because what always comes to mind is that Spider-Man, the very first, and I'm bringing up Spider-Man a lot only because there's so many good examples there.
Sure.
The first Spider-Man story was only 12 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
That fact amazes me every time I think about it.
But why?
Like, because we assume, and I think this comes from the movies and things like that, because Spider-Man is such a huge franchise, we don't realize that the franchise grew from a very strong kernel of a story, right? So
Right.
when those 12 pages introduce everything, like introduce Flash, introduce Aunt May, Uncle Ben dies, everything, he becomes a wrestler, you meet Mary Jane. It's like all these things happen in these first 12 pages of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that could possibly have taken place is that it was through the efficiency.
It's effective storytelling.
It's effective storytelling.
Right.
And yeah, that's what always comes to mind. And that sometimes that can be my biggest criticism of a lot of modern, no matter who the publisher is,
Right.
a lot of modern comics, if they fall short in any capacity, it's usually somewhere centered around effective storytelling.
Right. And that's something that is that's the paradox. Mm-hmm. That's the challenge. That is the path that you have to follow or flow through just to be able to be effective at it. I know I'm aware of people who are, they're not the greatest visual artists in the world. Mm-hmm. They're highly effective storytellers.
Effective storytellers, right?
You know what I mean? I know some people who are great writers, but they write, but they're just like great concepts, but not always the most effective storytellers. Right. But again, I know the flip in both sides, right? Mm-hmm. And again, these are just my opinions. I don't envy your position because you are. Well, no, I'm serious. I don't envy your position because you are kind of a multidisciplinary creator in that you create art, right? Mm-hmm. You're a content creator, but you're also a journalist, right? Mm-hmm. And so I tried that for a second. Remember, I was working for Bleeding Cool.
Right, Bleeding Cool, yeah.
I had to decide, dude, what hill are you going to die on?
Right.
what hill are you going to die on? Are you going to spend your time reviewing other people's books? Or you going to do your own books? Mm-hmm. Now, it looks kind of, that was a come to Jesus moment I had to go through, because I had gotten to the point, I had a backlog of 41 articles I had written. Mm-hmm. Like 41 interviews. And I think I only published like 10 of them. Right?
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I had a technique where you were one of the people I interviewed. Yeah, I had a technique where I could get stuff written quickly, right? Mm-hmm. But then I had to go back and edit it. Mm-hmm. But it just, after a while, I was spending all my time developing stories for journalism, and I wouldn't get into the content. Now, that was just a little sidebar. Yeah. All I'm just saying is that you have to figure out, right? Every cake needs a base.
Yes.
It needs a base.
Yes.
If it doesn't have a base, then it's just all of the accoutrements that go on top of it.
Right.
The cliche, all style and no substance. Mm-hmm. Like, you can look at Infinitum and you like, it's this epic. Mm-hmm. Thank you. But in its core, it's not. It's only 280 something images that, if they were put on a regular standard comic book page, probably would be no more than 50 pages long.
And let's touch on that, because
right.
sometimes I think creators forget there's an art to the whole thing is a work of art, right? It's
Yes.
not just it
Yes.
starts with a story, it starts
Yes.
with writing. You bring in an artist, he designs pages and stuff like that. But the book itself is a part of the story, right? It's sort of like there's an efficiency there. It's editing that needs to take place. You know, pulling pages out of the book is important part of making this story, making this piece of art work, right? If it's like if the story goes too long, it's like, you could, it's just like cooking. It's like if you bake it too long, you can burn it. If you undercook it, it's raw, right? It's like um I'm seeing that, in some of the stories I'm reading, sometimes it's sort of like, okay, we could have cut this down like 5 or 6 pages. You know what I'm
Sure.
saying? Like this 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 dialogue here, you could have saved yourself a page or two. You could save yourself, some dialogue, things like that, because it's all a part of creating this piece of art, this comic book, right?
Sure.
Um, and I think that's an important part of writing is editing and things of that nature. Um, but also going back to Infinitum in particular, yeah, it's 200 some pages, but the core story is you could have gone for another 200 some pages, or it could have just been 15, 20 some pages. It's like the story was so perfectly crafted
Thank
that
you.
you can expound on it, and that's the thing that, and it's so hard. if you don't if you don't really understand it or see it, you'll miss
Right.
it.
Well,
um
let me say this. Let me say this. So the base story, the concept is, what would it be like to live forever?
mm,
Now you got all these things like Highlander and the vampire Lestat. People that average, I live for 100 years,
yeah.
200 years. Some of them I've been living for 5,000 years. Well, the character in Infinitum lives for billions,
Hmm. Yes.
right?
Yep.
It would suck to live forever.
Yes.
Anyone and everyone you love, hate, entire communities and societies go away, but you should
Hmm.
keep going. That would be hell. That is hell,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So once I had that down, the
Yes.
story effectively told itself.
Yes. Right.
It was on top of it, the
Hmm.
coverings that I mentioned before, the
Hmm.
accoutrements, whatever the term is. Like, okay, I want to deal with Afrofuturism and
Right.
all of the different aspects, meaning period base, ancient Africa.
Hmm.
I want to deal with the Atlantic slave trade. I
Hmm.
want to deal with the New World. I want to deal with the contemporary, civil rights movement moving up towards this now AI dominance,
Hmm.
colonization beyond race,
Hmm.
right? And the way to do that was to be able to tell the story in such a way where I could effectively, once I had that down,
Hmm.
I knew, okay, here's the character. It's like, well, what would you do
Hmm.
if you were cursed to live forever, right?
Right. Right.
After the first 100 or 200 years, moving to 300 years, you'd be like, I got to stop this. I can't, I'm ready to go. I can't do
Hmm.
this anymore.
Hmm.
And then what do you do when you find out, oh my God, every
Hmm.
time I try to do it, it doesn't work.
And you know what's interesting? Just to expound on the idea of crafting a piece of the whole art, the craft of creating this
Sure,
story.
sure.
Um, you could just as easily have put this in panels, right?
Right.
You could
It
have
was
laid
in
this
panels at
out,
one point. Yes.
and but it's something about laying it out this way in this book format,
Right.
right? Um, in this format.
Right. I can tell you the motivation.
Okay.
All right. So I knew I couldn't do a regular comic book. Right? I'm putting up my quotation fingers, right? With 3 to 6 panels or 3 to 9 panels a page, fully painted like that. It would take me, what's up, Michael? It would take me 20 years to get through that. That would be so difficult to do because it would just be an unending amount of work. And I had ways to expedite my process. I work totally digital. I'm not only a 2D illustrator in using Photoshop and Clip Studio Pen, but I'm also a 3D guy. I've been modeling in the computer for over 25 years at this point, right? 3ds Max. And now, just over the last year, I've begun to integrate game engine techniques into my tool set, right? Because I've always tried my best to innovate wherever I was, but in comics, it was like, okay, how do you do better? How do you do better? How do you change this? How do you expand the scope of what you're trying to do? Right.
Right.
But with that, if I am asking someone to spend $27 on my book, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And the one thing I don't want to do, because I know what it's like to be in my career, to be overlooked, bypassed. Right. I know what that's like. So I was like, okay, you got this chance to do this big thing. I had success at Eddie's Rocket. We'll talk about the reissue in a little bit. But with Infinitum, I knew if I never did another book again, I wanted to leave everything on the field. So that part was ego-based. I needed Imani Lateef, right? I needed you to be able to look at it. And even if you hate me, I need you to be able to look at it and go, oh my God. So when you see those Egyptians hit the perimeter of that city, right? And they're throwing catapults of flame and they're sending their troops in, I need you to feel it.
Yes.
I need you to know, oh my God, it's chaos going on, but they're holding them off. They're holding them off, right? But it's a lot of people dying, right? There's flame everywhere. These generals are giving orders and they're sending their men effectively to keep hitting this wall. Now, the way I'm describing it, that's one thing. Yes. I need to be able to show it to you. Right? So everything had to be bigger than life. I couldn't just do certain shots required this mass of characters. Massive cityscapes, but then some of them required close-ups, almost like a film, very much like a film, in fact. So that's why I did that book. I wanted the audience to feel that, okay, he's telling me the story, which is very simple, but it feels complex as hell. But damn, this dude painted the hell out of this thing. I had all those things going, then I had completed my task, accomplished my task.
I'm gonna take it a whole, not one step further, like a million steps further.
Oh Lord.
Dog. So reading this book, this is my official critique.
Okay.
So this is basically, so what's interesting is that Ta-Nehisi Coates just got done with his run on Black Panther, where he takes T'Challa into space, and he creates the intergalactic empire of Wakanda, right? Infinitum is the story that Coates would have wrote if Marvel would have permitted him to do so. Okay, I want y'all to understand the things that this character does. How do you pronounce it? Aja Ogba?
Yeah.
Aja Ogba, the main character of Infinitum, is an immortal. At one point, he refers to himself as a deity, and that's what's really interesting. We'll get into this in a little bit. he has these changing perceptions of himself. He discovers that he's cursed with this the fact with the idea that he cannot die. So he goes from feeling cursed, going mad. He goes he
literally
refers to
lives long enough to go mad, then become unmad.
become sane again. Literally loses his mind, at one point, and grows it back. He actually loses limbs and grows it back.
That scene was dope, though, wasn't it?
That was dope.
I was like,
you're right,
man, let's do that.
There's scenes, and that's right.
Right. Like, without giving too many
scenes like that, it couldn't.
Right.
You couldn't have done this in small panels, right?
Right.
It's sort of like you have, and this is a spoiler, but this really illustrates the storytelling that you'll find in here. It's sort of like this man, he's a warlord. So any war that you could possibly think of, this black man was a part of, and he has limbs blown off of him, and he takes, basically, since he's immortal, he takes an eternity, or however many hundreds of years or decades or whatever, and he grows those limbs back, and
it hurts. It's not
like
it's
torture. Yes, it's just he experienced all this stuff, and I say this is the Black Panther story that tons of Black Panthers, yeah, I'm spoiling stuff, Morgan. This is the type of story that Black Panther fans are always looking for. They are always looking for. I'm spoiling the hell out of this book. I really want y'all to read this book, though. These are the type of story they always wish that T'Challa or some writer of Black Panther would write.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? The empire this character creates, right? This character also leaves the planet Earth and colonizes planets off of, outside of Earth. He does that as well. But when you look at the backstory as to how he pulls it off, this is the type of stuff that you wish, Marvel and DC would create something like that. And they're not going to. They're not going to empower any Black characters like this. And if they ever do, just remember they had to have read it here, because they didn't read it anywhere, nowhere else, that's been published, on a larger scale. This is this is where you will find that story. And that's not, I'm not gassing Tim up at all.
I feel incredibly gassed up. Thank you. I don't know.
No, it's
I normally always have something to say, but wow.
No. It's
thank you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's because and this goes into the idea of Afrofuturism, and we can get into more depth on this. It's sort of like the Black Panther is such a popular icon, right? It's sort of like he stands in as this ideal Black man, superior Black man. He's supposed to be superior, coming from a technologically advanced, quote unquote, country, Wakanda.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so weird how we never really see those things fleshed out, really. It's like how, and you do that in this book. It's sort of like,
can I say this?
Almost, yeah, go ahead. I'm done waxing.
No, I appreciate it, because after a while I'm like, stop, Imani. I appreciate it. Stop. I'm trying to think. Well, let me preface what I'm going to say by saying this. So, I'm in the Carnegie Hall Afrofuturism Festival, right?
Yes.
And I have a lot of programming going on in the festival. The festival runs from February 1st all the way to March 31st, 2 months. Mm-hmm. And the objective for my role in the festival is to tell my story, right?
Yes.
Tell my past, tell my present, showcase my future. So everything that I do in comics, my past archival work, my films, all that stuff's premiering during the festival. Everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm stating that to simply say that I don't want to lose my train of thought here, but it's more that I'm trying to, hopefully for better, not for worse, hopefully for better, is to tell my story, to let the world know, or the community we're in, know who I am, right? Like most people only know me from Maddie's Rocket and Infinitum. Black Metropolis, my exhibit that'll be up, it goes into my 30-year past. All the work I've done in hip hop and black rock, editorial cartooning, all that stuff will be shown.
Okay.
I'm stating that to know, and you never know who's watching. If I could write a Black Panther story or art, I kill that, man. I kill that. I kill it. I kill it because it's all you're doing. It's like the main character in Night of the Living Dead. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not even speaking about Black women at this point. I'm speaking specifically about Black men. Right? Now, Black women, that's what Maddie's Rocket is for.
Yes.
That's what it's for. And there are aspects of Infinitum to deal with women. And there's more to come, which I'll reveal over the coming weeks during the festival regarding that as far as Infinitum goes.
Okay.
But Infinitum is about people that look like you and me. Grown Negroes. That's what it is. And the very real plight that we have of just walking out the door every day to make a living and maintaining your ability to take care of your family, right? To be a constructive member of society and not die. That's always there. That's always there. There's never a moment where it's not there, right? When you start dealing with film, which is one of the reasons why Infinitum exists, it's like Black men have always been sacrificed, their characters. They've mutilated, killed, to give some sort of, Clint Eastwood can go off on everybody in Unforgiven once Morgan Freeman gets it.
Right.
See what I'm saying? That happens over and over and over. And Clint Eastwood built his career on that. Not just Black men, but all of his partners were minorities or different gender. And the partner always got killed or maimed. And when that happened, Dirty Harry could do what? Harry could do what? He could be dirty.
Right.
Because he was giving it to the bad guy. Right? So I wanted to do a story where that didn't exist. This guy, he did what he wanted. Right? He did what he wanted. So if I ever got the opportunity to do a story on T'Challa, right? There'd be three ways I would do it. First of all, it would have to do, he would be, you have to keep him a hero. This is not Aja Oba in Infinitum. He's a warlord. Now I can't use profanity on this show, but he's a warlord.
Yes.
He's no different than many of these drug dealers on the corner. They do what they do, but there's nobody who you want to, because there's this aspect of what they're doing is cutthroat.
Yes.
Right? There are people who are suffering because of that. When you're telling a story of a T'Challa, right? You're taking someone. What if Patrice Lumumba had lived?
Right.
With the political acumen of a Barack Obama, right? But with the technical and scientific proficiency with a Reed Richards, right? But all that fused together.
Yes.
And then you ride that story. Because it's a comic book. You still got to keep it superhero.
Yes.
Right there. You know what I mean? It's like Infinitum. I'm not going to necessarily be invited. Hey, let me talk to the 10th graders. Let me talk to the middle school group. right? Because Infinitum features decapitations, all that kind of stuff. It's for adults. It's for grown people, right? Men, women, white, black, yellow, in between can read Infinitum and hopefully feel like they're looking at as a story as dense as Nova, right? These Mobius books I have, and I wanted something that was you would feel like, okay, this is for me. Maddie's Rocket, that's YA. Few middle schoolers if they're advanced enough, and then going into the teens or young adults, that they can get into Maddie's Rocket with that. So it's important. I would love to have the opportunity, even if I couldn't do a series. I would love to do like a 200 or 300 page painted graphic novel.
Right? Well, see, but at the same time, I don't want people to get sidetracked because I'm telling you, it's like you did it in this.
Thank you. Because
it's an interesting, because I've had the same conversation with the artist. He's also a writer, creator too, Junie Ba, who wrote Monkey Meat. And if you haven't checked that out, please check that out. It's from it's published out now. You can pick it up from your comic book store. Published through Image Comics. Right. But he's from Senegal. He's also wrote Djala also as well. And I asked him, as far as, what's interesting about Black Panther is that not too many, there's maybe one African writer has ever written a genuine African story of the Black Panther. And he went so far as to say, the Black Panther is a very good American Black story. It's not necessarily a African story. And he perceived he was suggesting that, if it he had some ideas as to how he would approach a Black Panther story.
It's so simple, man. It's like all you're doing is you're pulling from. I know Coates did it to a very large extent. All you're doing is pulling it from my perspective. It's very simple. You just pull from African political history, the more idealized forms of African political history, and you're fusing that with Yoruba mythology, right? For me, T'Challa is and the Black Panther is a combination of Ogun and Shanga. That's what it is. That's what it is. He's this person who's on one end, it's very flashy in terms of his fighting style and the way he carries out his technology, but there's this warlike aspect to what he does. But just because he's very much a strategist.
But see, that's what's so interesting is that sometimes I've noticed, even especially fans do this a lot. It's like that's how they describe T'Challa in his most idyllic fashion.
Right.
And yet, very seldom do we see that character actually actualized that way. So that's why it feels like, that's why Infinitum feels like it's a type of story that, if you're like a Black Panther fan, you get so fed up. It's like, man, waiting for them to do what Black Panther is supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then you'll say, you know what, bump it. They'll never, forget it. They'll never tell this story. Let me tell my own story. And then you write this, right?
By you saying
Monkey
that,
Meat. You write
by you saying that, it means that Infinitum succeeded.
Yes.
Its purpose. And I thank you for that, brother. It means more than you know.
Right. And I've talked so much about, I'm almost out of time. So real quick, it's crazy because I went, I was ranting. No, real quick about Afrofuturism as a storytelling medium. We got 12 minutes, so we got a little time. Okay. So, I want people to really understand what Afrofuturism really is, because I
Okay.
think we can easily fall into the trap of just thinking that Afrofuturism is just black people with glorified Apple Watches, or just give a black person technology, or for Afrofuturism, right? It's like I think could you really lay it out as to what Afrofuturism really is?
Okay. So first of all, my perception and understanding of what Afrofuturism is has had to expand
Yes. Okay.
as I've run into more people who have their opinions on what Afrofuturism is. And these are not people with just opinions; they're actually practitioners, right?
Yes.
So there are people. So Afrofuturism is what, when you, like an atom, when you smash together race politics, black culture. Notice I kept those two separate, right?
Yes.
Technology and social science. Social science, it's interpersonal, social mores, and you fuse those things together, right? It can become anything. It can be a comic book, it can be fashion, it can be a movie, it can be literature, prose, it can be poems, it can be political movements. The idea of a Martin Luther King saying the mountaintop, right? I may not get there, right? But he's
Right.
basically describing what it looks like.
Yes.
This is what he's doing. That's being able to see himself, or in his case, his offspring in the future. It's that self-actualization that comes from that. Now, if you apply that to, say, watch design, right? That becomes something else. It's something that measures hypertension, which runs rampant amongst black people, right?
Okay.
Right. It measures diet,
Right.
right? And it's an alarm that restricts what foods you can and cannot eat, right? But it also sends a reminder for you to be able to consistently keep in contact with your elders. You see what I'm saying? Now, I'm mentioning that to say that just over the last year and a half, I've been very fortunate to work with BSAM, Ronaldo Anderson's Black Speculative Arts Movement, and they partner with this group called N Square, which is Futures Projections Training Organization. For the last year, through UNESCO and all these things, basically been doing my visual work, but with practical applications in the creation elements, styles, concepts that can actually change people's lives in real life. Right? But that's what Afrofuturism is. All I'm doing with Infinitum is applying it to a narrative story. I'm saying, okay, this is going to sound weird, but I'm going to say it. There is no book that, if Imani Lateef would say, well, without describing it, what object, what artifact can you hand me to describe what Afrofuturism is? The objective for Infinitum was that you could hand that to him. Read this. And the question would be answered.
Yes. And in that, with it answering that question, what you will find is that you could say that Afrofuturism brings the past into the future.
Yes.
And what you'll notice that in the story, particularly in Infinitum, is that with this main character being immortal, what you'll find is that he sees not only all these recurring themes that he's lived through all these things in his past, and he relives them again in his future. And he lives them in the present. He lives them, and so what I believe a core aspect of Afrofuturism is that marrying of the past, of what's considered ancient and what's considered the future or futuristic and things of that nature. Sure. It's the marrying those things into one thing, as opposed to leaving the past behind altogether in exchange for this shiny thing,
Yes.
instead of, it's like, no, it's like you're using technology to um preserve those things and carry those things into the future.
Right. And understand that I'm just one guy. The only distinction that I hold is I've been doing it for a really long time. That's it. That's it. There's at least 4 or 5 guys that have been doing it as long as I have. In certain cases, 1 or 2 of them longer. But I've been doing it for a long time, and my work has up till pre 2014. Not a lot of it has been seen, and so that's what my participation in the festival is bringing that about, to show my modality. Some of the earliest work in the show is from the 70s, when I was 11, 12, 13, when I formally started drawing when I was 4 or 5, right? But I started doing comics around 5, 6, because all my older brothers did it. But it was, I always had black characters in it, because my main character was called Thunderstar. He was essentially Jim Kelly in Enter the Dragon, right? But when I actually said, okay, this is what I'm going to do, I was about 12 or 13. Just before I went into high school work. Oh my God. And then everything went crazy after that. So that's what this entire festival put on at Carnegie Hall. It's probably, probably about it. It is the biggest festival that's ever happened. It's not the first time there's been a festival. I think the first time there's been what Ronaldo did, with BCU movement, with different things, small, but this is the first time where you've had a major cultural institution like Carnegie Hall do it. So, you got Carnegie Hall, you got Kennedy Center, you got Smithsonian, right? Those are the primary big 3, right? And so Carnegie Hall has done not just one event, but an entire festival that at one point, the perception that it would be a citywide festival, but now it's not. It's actually, there are people all over the country and probably aspects of the world who are festival partners. So my company, Diesel Funk Studios, is a festival partner for the Carnegie Hall Afrofuturism Festival. So part of my mandate was to generate programming. So I'll be doing live art shows. I'll be doing 2 comic book workshops, which is basically what I do for the Schomburg, because people love it when I talk to the kids like that. I have to do that because some stuff has to be community based.
Yes.
I got to talk with Arthur Jaffa, who's this, big time fine artist, who was also my oldest brother. We will see what happens with, Steph Curry, Maddie's Rocket, book 1, which will be read next week, that you can buy online. He chose it as his book club pick, underrated book club pick for February 2022. And it's pretty exciting stuff going on, man. I'm very, very nervous, because like, oh God, can I carry it off? But you kind of like have to, the way to get over being nervous is just have fun.
Yes, sir.
And it's like, if I can do just what we did over the last hour, I'm good.
Yeah.
That's all.
Oh, that's perfect, man. And this is like, as for what, as far as what Afrofuturism is, yeah.
Okay. Wanted to make sure.
Oh yeah, and then I think with this event, people can find other ways of expressing it and engaging in it.
Right.
Definitely engaging. And where can they find you and all your many events and accolades and things of that nature?
Okay.
You can find Infinitum any store that carries books. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah. So Infinitum can be found where all fine books are sold. That's Barnes and Nobles, wherever, if it's not in there, you can still order it through there. And the same thing will be happening with Maddie's Rocket within a few days. Because it's published through my company, Diesel Funk Studios, and it'll have the same, distribution as any other book out there. You can find me at Diesel Funk, DIESELFUNK, On Twitter, Diesel Funk. On Instagram, Diesel Funk. On Facebook, Diesel Funk.
Gotcha.
On the YouTube channel where all of my program, because we got COVID, couldn't do anything in person except for the exhibit will be physical at the Children's Art Carnival at I believe 65 Hamilton Terrace in Harlem, running from February 1st all the way to March 31st. We'll be open probably around 6 days a week, regular gallery hours.
Okay.
And that's my only in-person event. You have to come in masked and vaxxed, obviously. But everything else is virtual. And you can find my programming, which will run on YouTube under Diesel Funk. Everything's
All right.
Diesel.
All right. I appreciate you coming on, Tim.
Bless you, sir.
This is a lot of fun. For my man Tim Fielder, this is Imani Lateef.
65 Hamilton Terrace. 65 Hamilton Terrace.
All right. 65 Hamilton Terrace. All right. Check out Black Comics Universe for even more information. All right. Peace.